Yeah, up to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I tried every kind of drug imaginable. They were all out there, and my mission became to try them all, and that's what I did.
And my mother, what they called back in the 1950s, they said she had a nervous breakdown. Years later, we found out she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenic.
You don't talk about anything and then follow that up with anger. And so you have anger and don't talk about anything. So, yeah, we had quite a bit of dysfunction in our family, even though we were at church every time the doors were open.
And I got to keep this secret because my dad has kept this secret all these years. And so I thought, okay, so we have a secret that we have to keep. So in my mind, I learned if you tell the truth, you will hurt people.
Here's what we didn't realize that even after just one time, you can get pregnant.
Mhm.
And so at 16 years old, she's 16, I'm 15, she gets pregnant.
So I didn't get to experience the beauty of childbirth, seeing my baby or hearing him cry.
And then there was a little lady there that said, "Oh, and by the way, you probably need to go to AA." And I said, "Is that like a car club?" She goes, "No, that's AAA. You need AA, Alcoholics Anonymous."
And so all of a sudden, I turn the music down and I'm driving and I hear a voice in the back seat of my car.
Let's look at some of the most famous Bible characters. Moses performed one of the most incredible miracles, the parting of the Red Sea. Yet, he committed murder and had anger issues. How about Abraham, the father of the Jewish people? He lied about his wife twice and offered to give her away. Then he slept with a servant girl, creating a religious rift among the Arabic people for 4,000 years. King David committed adultery. Samson struggled with lust and pride. Jonah was a racist. And Peter denied Jesus Christ 3 times. What about you? Have you ever done things that you feel disqualify you from serving Jesus? Do you have secrets in your life that keep you stuck in sin and shame? Maybe God has a plan for your life and wants to turn your secrets into a miracle. Today, I have a wonderful couple who have had some secrets that they felt needed to be kept, but God had a different plan for their life, and it's an amazing story. I'm Eric Hutchinson, and this is the If Nothing Changes podcast. Today, my guests are zooming in all the way from Colorado, and I can't wait for you to hear their story. So, hey, friends, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
I'm a believer and follower of Jesus Christ. It was my struggles with drugs and alcohol that brought me here. My name is Mac.
Hey, Mac. And hey, Eric. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ who struggled with codependency, brought me to celebrate recovery. My name is Mary.
Well, hi, Mac. Hi, Mary. So glad that you guys came. And my very first question is, Mac, how in the world do you deliver all those presents in one night? I still don't understand how you do that.
Actually, there's a bit of magic in there. So, it's a hard night. I mean, even my reindeer and stuff, they only work one night a year, but it's the hardest night ever. But we got the sleigh ready. We're ready to go. So, it's a little magic.
All
I'm
right.
making lots of cookies. I'm Mrs. Claus. And so he has lots of homemade cookies on the sleigh, and the reindeer are charged up, ready to go.
Well, most of the listeners are saying, what are you talking about? Because we can't see it. But if you can see the picture on the podcast, which I post the picture with the podcast, Mac looks extremely similar to Saint Nick. And so I love the fact that you guys dress up every year and do that. It's such a joy to see that. And you bless so many people through that. So tell us a little bit about your beginning. Where were you born and raised? And tell us a little bit about your family of origin.
Yeah, so that's a pretty large question because I was raised all over the place. I was born in 1958 in Fort Ord, California. So just saying Fort Ord, you probably have some idea that that could be military service, and my dad was in the military. And so Monterey, California is where I was born, but from there we moved from there to Washington State, to Germany, to Virginia, to Georgia, to California again, back to Germany. So all over the place. But I was born in California. I was born to Joe and Carla Owen. They eventually had 6 kids. So I was one of 6 siblings. I'm right in the middle. I have 2 older a brother and sister, and then I have 3 younger siblings. My mom and dad were good Christians. They raised me right. My story will eventually get into, though I made poor decisions, even though I was raised right.
Well, it sounds like you mentioned that your parents were Christians. It sounds like that faith was a part of your family. Did you guys go to church regularly, and did you see a personal relationship with with Christ with your mom and dad?
100%. My dad actually preached wherever he was stationed. So he worked his day job, but then on the weekends he'd find a church and he'd preach at that church with the time he was stationed there. So they definitely had a relationship. We never missed a service. I mean, even when we were out of town, my dad would find a church for us to go to while we were out of town. And so Sunday and Wednesday night were always on the table. They were never an option. They were what we were going to do.
So let me ask you this question, because usually whenever your parents have faith, that usually translates into the children having faith early. Did you have a Jesus moment as a child? Did you, and was it sincere?
Yes and no. So yes, I had a Jesus moment. No, it wasn't sincere. Um, I grew up believing and knowing Jesus. And I say knowing in the sense of I knew who he was, but not knowing him in a personal relationship. When I was 12 years old, I was baptized, but I was at a Christian summer camp. There were a couple of good-looking girls being baptized, so I thought, why not? This could be an end to a relationship with them, or at least one of them. And so that was my whole reason for being baptized. I appeared to enter a relationship with Jesus, but was for all the wrong reasons. So I never really had a real relationship with Jesus until fast forward, I was 30 years old. So at young age, I knew who Jesus was, but I really didn't know him personally.
You had a head knowledge, but not a heart knowledge, it sounds like.
Exactly. Exactly.
So do you notice any, and we talk about in recovery dysfunctions and that sort of things. I mean, so I grew up in a Christian home as well. I accepted Christ when I was 5, and my parents were great. And but I did see a little bit of anger issues and some other things go up. Do you notice now any dysfunctions in your family, or was it just sublime?
No, our family was full of dysfunction. Good people who were living a dysfunctional life. My dad actually had been married before, and he was stationed in Germany another time, came back home, and his wife that he had at that point was living with somebody else. So he had 2 children. He got those 2 children. That would be my oldest brother and sister. Well, I didn't know that they were my half brother and sister. And somebody told me one time, or said to me, they said, Mac, hey, so your older brother and sister, that's your half brother and sister. I said, what are you talking about? That is not true. Don't you ever say that again. And so they said, and then they said to me, they said, well, why are they in your mom and dad's wedding pictures? And I went, what? I said, I got to leave right now. So I go home. I look at the wedding pictures. Lo and behold, pictures I've seen my whole life. There's my brother and sister. I never put two and two together. So I asked my mom and dad about it. I said, Mom and Dad, why are Sammy and Ditas in this picture right here? And they basically said to me in no uncertain terms, don't talk about that again. Never bring it up. We don't talk about that around here. So that's part of the dysfunction in our home. You don't talk about anything, and then follow that up with anger. And so you have anger and don't talk about anything. So yeah, we had quite a bit of dysfunction in our family, even though we were at church every time the doors were open.
So what would you classify pre-high school? What would you classify as your biggest struggle? What were the things that you were dealing with? What did you believe about yourself? And what would you say you struggled with pre-high school?
Sure. Insecurity, number one, not knowing, since I couldn't talk about anything, I didn't know if I really even fit in this family, they said that I did, but if I couldn't talk about things, and so that was, I really would think that insecurity would be my biggest hang up at the time.
So as you move into high school, and did you make any bad choices, or tell me a little bit about your high school period.
Yeah, 100%, a lot of bad choices. I was introduced to cigarettes at 12 years old, and people can talk about things like cigarettes or nicotine, marijuana being gateway drugs, and so many people say those are not gateway drugs. Well, I don't know about everybody else, but they were for me. And so I do know this, every addict that I know that's on something other than marijuana, they all started with marijuana. And so whether it's a gateway drug or not, I believe it is. But so I started 12 years old smoking cigarettes, and that same year somebody introduced me to marijuana, and the insecurity that I had as a preteen, by 13 years old, I felt totally secure in these new friendships I had developed because I found immediate acceptance. All I had to do was do what they were doing. And there was no shame, no guilt. It was just acceptance. And so I went from insecurity to total security, but the total security then was not in Jesus, was not in my family. It was around the friends that I had made at that point in my life. And so, yeah, up to 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, I tried every kind of drug imaginable. They were all out there, and my mission became to try them all, and that's what I did. And so, and by that time, about 15, is when I met the sweetest, most vibrant ray of sunshine ever, and she still is today, and that would be Mary. I saw her walking down the hall at school, and I thought, I just moved to a new school in Louisiana. My dad went to a seminary to become a full-time pastor. We moved again, which I did not want to do. We moved to Louisiana. I see Mary on my first day of school, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to know that girl right there because she is something.
Well, enter Mary. So,
Yay.
hey, Mary. So, what did you think about this guy on your right over there? What did you think about him the first time you met him?
Well, I'd never seen anybody with a 20-inch in diameter afro. And he was walking down the hallway and it was just bouncing up and down. And he had the brightest blue eyes and the kindest smile. And I just thought, I've never seen him before at school. And so then we actually met at summer camp. A couple of weeks later was church summer camp, and he showed up there and I showed up there. And so the last night of camp, he asked somebody else to ask me if I would go out with him that night because he was too scared to ask me himself.
Insecurity still was a part of the things, I guess.
And so I told him, I said, well, I might, but he's got to ask me himself. And so he did ask me, and we went out that night, had our first kiss in front of Louisiana Power and Light Company at a stoplight. I remember like it was yesterday. And we dated ever since. And we've been married. It'll be 48 years this December.
Why don't we now go back to your past a little bit and your beginnings? So, what was it like? Where were you born? And tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in your family of origin.
Okay. I grew up in Monroe, Louisiana. I was born in 1957 at St. Francis Hospital. And I want to back up a little bit more before I was born. 6 years before I was born, my brother was born. And my mother, what they called back in the 1950s, they said she had a nervous breakdown and she ended up in a mental institution for a while. But anyway, years later, we found out she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenic. But my whole growing up to age 15, I did not know that there was anything wrong with my mother because she would just isolate and then end up in the hospital. So in my mind, I just thought, I guess all mothers go to the hospital a lot. My dad, I don't know how he did it, but he kept our life very normal. Thinking about Christmas, I love us, being Santa and Mrs. Claus. My dad made it over the top Christmas. Everything was so wonderful and magical and just fun. My life was great. When 12 years old is when I said, I want to be baptized, Dad, because I want to go to heaven. And so when I was baptized, I remember telling myself, I will never sin again. And then about the next week, something happened and I did sin. I was like, oh no, I've already broke my promise, because I was thinking I was going to be perfect after being baptized. But anyway, so I had a wonderful childhood. I have a brother and sister as well. And but then at age 15 is when my childhood went out the window because I heard my mother scream in their bedroom. And I ran in there and I saw my dad on one side of her and his best friend on the other side of her, and they were picking her up. and because she would not get up. And my dad was crying. He goes, we got to go to the hospital, because she had to go all the time. But I had never seen anything like that before. And so I was just shook up because it was scary seeing my mother screaming and crying, my dad crying. And so he told me later about it. So he started confiding in me at age 15. So at that point, I was like, oh, it felt like, oh, my world isn't safe. I thought it was, but now it's not. And I got to keep this secret because my dad has kept this secret all these years because I had no idea my mother had mental health issues and he wasn't telling anybody. He kept it all to himself. And so I thought, okay, so we have a secret that we have to keep. Otherwise, people won't like our mother.
What happened that day? I mean, she went to the hospital. Did they have to institute her or did she come back in or what happened?
This would go off and on every few months. She would have to go to the hospital, sometimes stay a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of months. But they would do, back then, it was shock treatments. And it was awful back then because they didn't put you to sleep or anything. I remember my dad telling me one time, when he went in to see her, she had her bloody imprints of her teeth on her tongue. And one time she tried to jump out of a real high story window of the hospital. And my dad got in there just in time to pull her back in with her arms back through that window because she hated it. She did not want to go there. And my dad hated taking her, but that was the only way she would do better for a while. But she would come home and not remember anything for a while. But little by little, her memory would start coming back. And then over a time, she'd start hearing those voices again. And it was really more about she was worried somebody was going to hurt us, her children, and her family. So she would like sit in a corner and read her Bible all day long. She wouldn't eat, she wouldn't sleep. Then she would become catatonic. Then the cycle happened all over again, over and over and over. At one point, the doctor said the only hope you have for your wife is to have a lobotomy. So she was fixing to have a lobotomy in Jackson, Mississippi. And the night before he was taking her to the hospital, it was all set, it was fixing to happen. He heard a voice and he feels like it was God speaking to him. And he heard, do not take her to have that surgery. So the next morning, he called the hospital and he canceled. He goes, I'm not bringing her. And we are so thankful now that he did because, now so many people are vegetables, they're just catatonic for the rest of their life. So we're so thankful for that he heard God's voice and he stopped that from happening. So from 15 on up, I knew what was going on then.
Is your mom still alive?
She's not. She died several years ago. But the beautiful thing about that, my mom and dad had the most beautiful relationship. My dad, well, first of all, my mom was sick all those years, but he loved her. He had stayed faithful to her all those years. He was a successful businessman. He traveled all over the world for church, for business, and he always stayed faithful to my mother. And so he took care of her for like 30 years. And then one day I saw on 2020, that's what was the dateline, maybe is what it
No, it's
was,
2020.
2020 back then, about this miracle drug called Clozaril is what it was called back then. I think it's called clozapine now. But they said it was like a Lazarus drug that people were waking up from the dead. And so I told my dad about it. We called her psychiatrist. He says, well, nobody in Louisiana has ever been on it. So she'll be the first one to try it. So we'll just see if it works. Well, sure enough, she did not want to go to the hospital. She wanted to stay home. So I said, I'll stay with you, Dad, because she had to get off the whole shoebox full of medicine that she'd been taking for all her life to stay a zombie and then put on this one little tiny pill. So she sat in the bathroom catatonic for like 3 days, wouldn't eat or drink nothing. And then the doctor said, okay, you can give her this one pill before she goes to bed. Well, the next morning we woke up. My mother was dressed. She was in the kitchen. She goes, hey, what y'all want for breakfast? It was like the mother I never knew. It was the most amazing thing. And she was like that the rest of her life
Wow.
on that one little pill.
It was like the last 30 years it never happened.
Right. It was unbelievable. So my dad got his honeymoon bride back after all those years. And so but then my dad got pulmonary lung disease. He would be in these board meetings all day long with smoke-filled room. He never smoked before, but he was breathing in secondhand smoke all day long. And it messed his lungs up. So he ended up for 20 years struggled and had to have an oxygen tank. My mother became his nurse Nightingale and took care of him his last 20 years of his life.
So what would you say was your biggest struggle pre-high school? What was your biggest struggle that you struggled with? Was it the relationship with your mom, or was it, how did you tell me about that?
I That's a good question, but I didn't realize I didn't have a good relationship with my mom until I became a teenager, and I would go to my friend's house, spend the night there, and see how they communicated with their mother. And so then I thought, mine's different. My mom's different than other people, but I didn't talk about it. So really, even I thought I had a normal childhood, but I actually had an abnormal childhood. I just didn't know it for a long time. So all of a sudden, when I turned 15, I was like, whoa, what's happening here? How did I not know all this all these years? So I started questioning the truth. Yeah, what is truth here? And then I met Mac.
Well, so it sounded like you had kind of an idyllic childhood. Did you feel insecure like Mac was feeling insecure, or were you very secure in yourself and everything? How did you feel about yourself?
I was very secure in myself. My dad called me and my sister his little princesses. And I remember this boy asked me one time, he said it kind of with a scoff. He goes, "Why does your dad call you a princess?" And I said, "Because he says we are special and unique." And so that's how I felt. I didn't feel like I was above anybody else or anything. I just felt loved and secure because of the way my dad raised me during that time.
So did you feel that way about God too? Because sometimes we talk about, that we have our earthly father treats us a certain way and we project that onto God. And it sounds to me like while Mac said that his experience with Jesus wasn't sincere, it sounds like that yours was sincere. Would that be accurate?
Yes, very much so. Yeah. But now it changed my view of God at a point, whenever I became a teenager and when things changed in my life. So, and I'll tell you about that when you're ready to hear that. Because I had the first secret of my mother's mental health issues. Well, I have two more secrets that I carried for a very long time.
Well, let's talk about, so did you know about Mac's drug use and stuff when when did you discover that? Because here you are, you're 15, right? You guys,
Yes.
you guys met and but sounds like to me like you both kind of love at first sight and you guys started spending time together and everything. So did you learn about some of his addictions or some of his habits during that early stage, or did it come later?
Well, I didn't know anything I didn't even know what addiction was, back then. But I had tried before I had met him, some of the girlfriends and we got somebody to buy us like I can't remember, tequila or something. And we tried that one night and we got drunk and I threw up. I was like, man, I'm never doing that again. That was awful. But then when I met Mac and he was smoking pot and he goes, "Why don't you just try this, see what you think. And and meeting his friends, here's where I started noticing that at church, and I grew up in the church. My dad was elder in the church. He was worship leader. But I noticed that the teens in the church, and actually grown-ups too, were very judgmental of other people. People gossiped about each other. But then this party crowd that he was a part of, that all of a sudden I was getting to know, they accepted everybody. And they were just having fun. It was all about laughing. There was no fighting. There was no gossiping, no judgment, just having fun together. And isn't that a great way for the enemy to reel you in like that? Because I thought, well, this is just fun. Yeah, I didn't see anything wrong with it. I thought I was intrigued by it, actually, even though like if we would ever go to a bar, I didn't feel good about that because I knew my daddy always said the devil's in there. So I was like, I got to get out of here because I didn't feel good about it. And sometimes I would feel guilty when I'd come home at night after being on a date with Mac And because I just thought, oh man, I'm disappointing my dad because he would be so disappointed if he knew what me smoking pot and partying and stuff. But I would just kind of shove that to the side because it felt good at the time. So, but still, I wrestled with that,
Yeah.
living on both sides of the fence, have loving God, but loving the world too.
So it sounds like, Mary, and again, I'm just listening to your stories, but it sounds to me like your usage of substances and that sort of thing was more socially motivated. And it sounds, Mac, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds to me like yours was more, you were insecure and you really liked the way it made you feel. And is that accurate or not?
100%.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So you guys, 15, you're moving forward, 16, 17, you're going through, did you guys both graduated from the same high school? And, tell me about those, as you're moving into young adulthood, how did things change with you?
Well, there's the third secret actually in here before we get to our 20s, and that was at 15. I talked Mary into having sex with me. First time for both of us. Neither of us had ever had sex, and I talked her into it with that, using that manipulative line. Well, if you love me, you would. And something I look back on now and think how sorry that was of me. But here's what we didn't realize, that even after just one time, you can get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so at 16 years old, she's 16, I'm 15, she gets pregnant.
Wow.
And that would be the decision. You know, I tell kids all the time, you make decisions in your teen years that will affect you for the rest of your life. And that is a decision that we made that has affected us for the rest of our life. Even though things now are very, very good, and we'll get into that later, but it's still not what it could have been because of the decision we made back then. So decisions made at 15, 16 years old can and will affect you for a lifetime.
And I want to say something here about my dad again. And I waited you talk about being in denial. I didn't even go to the doctor to find out I was pregnant until I was 5 months pregnant because I kept thinking maybe I'm really not, because I was so afraid about it. And so then, so I didn't tell my dad until I was 6 months. I had it all figured out where I was going to go. I was going to go with a friend and pretend like we're going on a senior trip because I was a senior that year. And, go away and have the baby and place it in adoption. So I had it all figured out. I told my dad. And so when I went to him to tell him, I was so afraid to tell him because I thought he is going to rake me over the coals because our church, no, this has never happened to anybody. And I could just visualize them tar and feathering me, putting me up on stage and kicking our whole family out of the church. That's what I thought was going to happen. So when one day I went down, my dad was laying on our sofa, taking a little nap after lunch. He would always come home at lunch. And I knelt down next to him and I said, Daddy, I got to tell you something. And I said, I just want you to know that I'm pregnant. And I was just waiting to hear the blow, that he was fixing to beat me over the head. And I saw tears stream down his face. And he was so kind and sweet. I mean, he just said, I love you, Mary, and we'll figure this out. And I said, well, I have it already figured out. I know what I have to do. And so he hired a private adoption lawyer. And so it was a closed adoption. So, I didn't get to see my baby. I want to say a little part about this. When I went to the doctor and found out I was pregnant, he knew my mother and he said, if you ever tell your mother that you're pregnant, she will end up in a mental institution for the rest of her life. So here I had another secret. So in my mind, I learned if you tell the truth, you will hurt people. But at childbirth, they shoved a gas mask over my face, didn't tell me what was going to happen. So all I experienced was pain, and it was more than just physical pain because I was separated from what was living inside of me. So I didn't get to experience the beauty of childbirth, seeing my baby or hearing him cry. So that was a really, really hard time in my life.
Mac, did you talk to your parents about it at all, or did you manage to keep that secret? I don't know how you could have, but did you keep it secret from them?
Yeah, I never, at that point in my life, I wasn't talking to my parents about anything. So that was one thing. That was just one more thing in a list of many that I was like, yeah, I'm not talking to them about it. So they never knew until years later as well. Um, so yeah, and that's in my amends that I had to make later on in my recovery is when I went to my
Mhm.
parents.
So, Mary, you had the child and you gave it. Did you even get to hold the child or you didn't see it or
No.
anything?
I asked him if I could just hold him. Well, at first, I didn't even know if he was alive or dead. They wouldn't tell me, or if it was a boy or a girl. And I'm telling you, I believe God sent an angel to
Okay,
me.
before you say that though, you're in there, you're crying pretty loudly, and one of the nurses came in and told you, you just need to be quiet and get over this.
Yeah.
That's when
Really?
God said, yeah.
Yes, yes. And I said, "Well, I need to know, did is my baby alive or dead or is it a boy or girl?" And then she just walked out. It was like I was a ghost and they would come in and out of the room, walk out. And so I'm just boohooing, crying, like, what just happened? And I'm in all this pain, no pain medicine, no nothing. And then all of a sudden, this big black man, he was like glowing. He was shiny. He was huge, and he had all white on. And he walked in. And he had the kindest eyes, and he said, "I'll find out about your baby." And so he walked out, and he came back in, and he said, "You have a beautiful baby boy. He's perfect in every way." And he goes, "Don't tell anybody I told you." And then he left, and I never saw him again. And I just wept then, soft tears then, 'cause I was like, thank you, God, that he's okay. But then I asked the lawyer, because then the lawyer came in, because I had to sign the papers the next day. And I said, well, can I just hold my baby one time? I just want to see my, and he said, no, you can't. And because I guess they knew I probably wouldn't have gone through with it then if I would have. And so that was hard. That
Mm.
was hard too.
Did you have any postpartum depression? I mean, that had to
Well,
just be really hit you hard. It's tragic.
here's the crazy thing about it. I go back home. I'm fixing to start going to college at Harding University in Searcy, Arkansas, 2 weeks later. So I've got the body of a woman that just had a baby. My bottom's still sore and everything. And I didn't have time to think about anything. All of a sudden, I had to put on a front in front of people. Even when I sat down, I would wince. So I'd have to be so careful because I didn't want anybody to know that I had just had a baby. So 2 weeks later, I'm in school in a university out of state. And so I didn't even get to think about it. It's
Um,
just kind of like I had to push it to the back.
Stuffed it down, didn't you? Yeah.
Yep.
So did Mac go with you to college or not?
He did. He
Yeah.
actually did. He followed me there. So,
Well,
but
my parents thought if they sent me to the right school, that would fix me with whatever problems it was I was having. And
Mhm.
so they sent me to Harding as well. Mary's dad was actually trying to get her away from me, but I followed her there. So about a month after we'd been there, I was asked to leave, to put it nicely, because I
yeah,
got busted smoking pot. Yeah,
yeah,
and so
yeah.
we came home and we were married 3 weeks later, and I now am definitely not in good graces with her father. So
Yeah, my dad actually married us. And when I think about when our kids got married, I was like, my poor dad, I don't know how he did that because I know that was so hard on, but he did he was very kind and he thought, well, they're getting married, so I'm gonna bless it anyway. I'm not gonna, you know, be ugly about it.
So Mac, it sounds to me like you were still using pretty regularly, at least with marijuana. Was that your drug of choice? Tell me a little bit about how much that was a part of your life.
yeah, I was definitely addicted. Like I said, in my 14, 15, 16 range, I tried every kind of drug that was out there. But then concluded that really I didn't care about them so much. I just like smoking pot. So I said, I'll just smoke pot because everybody knows that there's nothing wrong with smoking pot. That's what, in my mind, that's what I thought. Unfortunately, um, like I said earlier about being a gateway, that did lead to methamphetamines. And so when I did crystal meth, I found that's the drug that I really loved because I could stay awake as long as I wanted to. I could get a lot of work done, or so I thought. So anyway, that became my drug of choice. But for several years there, in the first part of our marriage, it was just marijuana. Then it moved to methamphetamines.
For the first 3 years of our marriage, it was like party central at our place all the time. Everybody came to our house. We'd all work during the day, go to our jobs, and come to our house at night. So just had a lot of fun. And that was kind of a way to numb the pain of not thinking about where is our son, you know? And so I did that for 3 years. But then at one point, I was like, man, I want to have another baby. And so I talked to Mac about us having another baby. And I said, so I'm quitting the party scene. I'm not doing anything anymore because I want to be healthy. I want to raise our children like I was raised. And so I quit it all. But then Max said, well, you can quit if you want to, but I'm not. And I didn't even know what addiction was then. So I just thought, oh, well, whatever, that's his deal, but I'm not going to do it. So I got pregnant very quickly with Cherry.
And she was the type of person that says, "I'm quitting and quit everything and never touched it again."
The only part I missed the connection of the social part of being Mac and with all those people because I would go back to the parties sometimes when I was pregnant just because I wanted to be with people, but they were all like, want me to partake and I wouldn't. And so then it wasn't fun anymore. And then I was looking at them all drunk and high and everything. I thought, they look like idiots over there. So this isn't fun anymore. So I quit going. So that's kind of when the conflict started with us.
So where is faith in all of that? Did you feel anything like, okay, I really need to, I'm not living right. I need to go to church. Was faith or God involved at all or not?
For Mary or for me?
We were both going to.
Oh, you were?
Church. Yes, we were going the whole time. We were just living with mask on Sunday morning. And
well, now you developed a relationship with Jesus at that point when you had our first daughter.
yeah,
I went sporadically just to save face,
I've had multiple guests on that were addicted to meth, and every one of them said that was a really turning point for them, and it ate up their life. So, did it have that effect on you? Did it become an obsession? And did you ever get into dealing, or was it all just consumption?
No, it was all consumption, but I will say that I always said that I would never use needles, but that's where it led me, to IV drug use. And it did become all consuming. I would stay up literally for a week at a time. And, at our cabinet business, the guys that were working at our shop would come work their shift during the day, and then I would stay up at the shop all night long. I'd be there the next morning when they got there. And thought that was somehow normal. I remember having all these great ideas. Then the next day I couldn't remember them, so I started writing down all the ideas I had while I was there all night by myself. And then later looking at them thinking that's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. So even in my addiction, I could see the stupidity of it, but I was like, I just like this too much. I can go as much as I want. At 29 years old, I had been doing meth for probably about 5 years. And I'd been awake for a week, and I came in on a Sunday morning to crash out because I knew they'd be going to church. At this point, I wasn't. And so I'd come in and they'd leave, and then I'd crash and get some sleep. And so I'm laying in bed pretending like I'm asleep, but I hear everything going on around me. And our youngest daughter, Callie, who was 4 years old, came and stood beside the bed and looked at me while she was talking to her mom. She goes, "How come Dad doesn't do anything with us anymore?" And then she said, "How come he doesn't go to church with us?" And Mary said, "Look, sweetie, he's been working hard, codependent." She said, she's been working hard. He's been working hard, so you just need to leave him alone. And she said, "Well, if he doesn't go, then I'm not going either." And so in that moment, God used that little girl to break my heart. And I realized that I was killing everybody that I claimed to love.
And that crushed me at that moment too, because I thought I was wanting to keep our daughters' lives perfect like my life was when I was growing up. And I thought I had kept it from them, that I kept a secret that their dad had a problem. And all of a sudden I'm seeing, oh, our 4-year-old, she's got hurt in her life already. And so it crushed me. So I said, come on, we're going to church, girls. So I get them in the car, we go to church. And that morning the sermon was on confession and how good it is for the soul. And I just wanted to run out of the building. I was so upset because I thought, I wish I could just tell somebody what's going on in our life, but I just can't. I don't think it's safe to tell what's happening. There's so much. And then last song was It Is Well With My Soul.
Mm.
And when they started singing that, I was like, in my mind, it's not well with me, it's not well with our girls. And
Definitely not well with me.
and it's not well with Mac for sure, right? So I just got to get out of here. So we started driving home. The girls were singing church songs in the back seat. I can't even see the road. I'm crying so hard because I thought, I can't take this. I don't know how much longer I can hang on to this. But then when I got home,
Well, unbeknownst to her, God is working on my heart and waking me up. And as soon as they left for church that morning, I got back out of bed, went and burned all my drugs, all the paraphernalia, everything that I had. I said, I've got to quit because I knew if I didn't get rid of everything right then, I would talk myself into using one more time. And so I said, I got to get rid of all this stuff. And as soon as I did that, I came inside and I had a yellow legal size pad of paper. And I just started writing down to Mary all the things I've been doing and that here's what I had to change. And so she comes home.
yes, I come home and I go back in the bedroom and I see him sitting in his recliner with this legal size paper in his lap. He goes, and he was crying. And I've never seen him cry ever because his dad always said, real men don't cry. And so he never cried. But then he was crying. So I was like, what is going on? He goes, I got some things to tell you. So I got the girls to go upstairs and get busy playing and stuff. And so he starts telling me everything that he'd been doing. And for me, it was a relief because I was like, oh,
He's
thank
not insane.
right. Because I thought I was married to an insane man at this point, and I thought, we can do something with this. I mean, he's getting honest. He's telling me what's really going on. So I said, look, we got to talk to somebody. We can't do this by ourselves. Would you talk to Ray? And that was our pastor at the time. His name was Ray, and he was just an old country preacher. He was the best thing. He would come to Mac's cabinet shop all the time and get Mac to make things for him because and Mac's thinking, oh, he loves my work, but he was actually getting them and then selling them. So
Yeah, he was really trying to build a relationship
he
with me.
was.
He didn't care about the stuff I was building. He was
Yeah.
just like, if I go over there and get him to build something, I can spend some time with him.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so Mary asked me if I would talk to Ray, and I said, yeah, I can talk to Ray.
Mhm.
And so he came over that afternoon and told me, he said, look, you don't have to tell anybody else in the church if you don't want to, but if you do, you might help somebody else and probably help you too. And again, in my mind, that's the second moment of clarity in my life. The first is when I burned all my drugs and everything. The second one was if I don't tell somebody, I'll again talk myself into using them. So I've got to tell people what I was up to. So I said, okay, we'll come to church that Sunday night. We did. We did an altar call. They had an invitation song. We went down front. I told everybody I was a drug addict, knowing they were going to say, don't come back here ever again. But that's not what they said. They all, as soon as that was over, the whole church, there was about 400 on a Sunday night. The whole church came down front and they surrounded us and they prayed for us. And they said, we don't quite know what to do with you. You're our first drug addict, but we want you to keep coming back. And I said, you want me to come back here next week? They said, yes, every time the door is open, why don't you keep coming back? And then there was a little lady there that said, oh, and by the way, you probably need to go to AA. And I said, is that like a car club? She goes, no, that's AAA. You need AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And so the church wanted me to come back. They sent me to AA. Ironically enough, not long after that, AA sent me back to the church. But it was just, it was that overwhelming moment. I did go in treatment. Actually, the little lady that said I need to go to AA said, I know a guy at a treatment place. Would you go talk to him? And Mary asked me if I would. And I said, yeah, but you'll see he won't want me to stay. And she said, okay, but would you talk to him? I said, yes. So I went and talked to the guy with Mary. And that's not what he said. He said, I do want you to stay. And Mary, I said at that point, I said, okay, I'll stay, but I got to go home and get my stuff.
And I said, "That's okay. Your stuff's in the trunk."
Good
And
for
so,
you.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
ready because I thought he's not leaving that place. Once I get him there, he's staying because I knew he needed to be there, but I had to let him make that decision himself.
Well, and then she stepped out of her codependency and said, "No, I got your stuff right here." So, but the cool thing about that was this church that Mary was really involved in, that I knew everybody there, I just wasn't involved in. But this church, the next Sunday morning, while I'm in treatment center, the pastor said, "Hey, we're going to stop church right now, and everybody, there's cards in front of you in the pew. I want you to take out one of those cards, and everybody's going to write Mac a little note this morning." And so the next day on Monday, I got over 700 cards
Did.
about people telling me that how much they love me. And then that was on top of the cards they were sending me all during the week. And I still have those cards today. This is 38 years later. I still have those cards. That's how
Yep,
much they meant
he
to me. And
does.
and I in recovery. I was the only one in there that was getting any cards that had family that even cared about them. So I was getting my cards and passing them to everybody else in the recovery center, and they were reading them like they were theirs.
Oh,
So
I got to back up a little bit here too. Whenever you first went into rehab, they told me that I couldn't see him or talk to him on the phone or anything for they wouldn't even say how long it was going to be. It ended up just being a week, but because he was doing so much meth, they said he could have a heart attack, a stroke, all kind of things. So they had to put him on lithium and calm his system down. And Max told me that whole time he was in there, he's crying every day, all day long. He'd never cried, and now all of a sudden he's crying. But anyway, the day came that they called me and said, "You get to come, you can come see Mac." And so as I was driving across the lake, going to see him that day, I had Sandy Patty playing Was It a Morning Like This? I had the windows down, blasting that. It was just, it was a beautiful day, but I didn't know what to expect because I thought, is he really, is he, who is he going to be? Is he going to be a new person, or is he going to go back to that old lifestyle? And so all of a sudden, I turned the music down and I'm driving and I hear a voice in the back seat of my car. And that voice said, "You're going to tell your story to many people." And when I heard that, I looked in the rearview mirror because I thought somebody was in the back seat. And so I was like, well, that must not have really happened. And so I'm driving a little bit more just for a few more seconds. And all of a sudden, it said it louder this time. It said, "You're going to tell your story to many, many people." And when I heard that, I was like, "No, I'm not telling my story to anybody. Well, we've got too much stuff going on." But you know what? You never say never to God. Because in that moment, I realized that God had been writing our story, and now I'm fixing to be putting it down on paper. And that scared me so bad. I mean, my knees were shaking. I could barely even push the gas pedal because I was so weak thinking about telling it. But then it made me think about how God, he's been writing our story ever since we were born, when we first took those first breaths. And he's been writing it all along. And the question was then, am I going to be willing to tell my story?
Well, that's amazing. I have a couple questions. One, so your daughters, and what was your first daughter's name again? Sherry or
Cherry,
oh,
cherry
Cherry.
like the berry,
Okay.
Cherry and Callie.
So Cherry and Callie. So Callie was 4. How old was Cherry whenever that?
7.
Okay, 7. So you've talked to them now. They've heard your story many times, I'm sure. So would you say that your relationship reached a deeper level once you shared all of the secrets, all the stuff with them? Do you feel like?
Oh my goodness. Yes, it was such a relief. And because I felt like before that my story didn't matter, evidently, because I couldn't tell it, because it would hurt people if I told my story. So it was such a relief when we started telling our story. In April of 2008, that was the day when Mac and I stood side by side behind the pulpit of a Baptist church in Oklahoma at a CR one day. They asked us to give our testimony together, and it felt so good because it was like we were equal, we were redeemed together, we had one voice. And when we finished, people rushed toward us and they were crying and hugging and saying, "You gave me hope for my story." And right then I felt like the whisper of the Holy Spirit said to me, "See, this is what I meant when I said, I'm going to use your story."
I am so curious about your son that I want to know, did you ever did you try to find out where he was?
Let me back up. So, talking about our son, when Cherry was born, I was awake, fully awake. Max in the room with me. Family is all out in the hallway. And when I saw Cherry be born, it was like all those feelings flooded back over me again. I was like, how did I give my baby up? Thinking about our son, who would have been 5 years old by then, I believe. And I cried. I just started boo-hooing, and the doctor looked at me. He didn't know what was wrong. He goes, "Why are you crying so hard? Your baby's fine. Everything's wonderful." And I didn't say a word. I didn't tell him anything, but I was just crushed. And I just started thinking, it hit me all right then. And so I started bugging the lawyer that handled the adoption. And I said, "Look, I got to know our son is okay. I just want to know if he's in a good family, if they love him. He's got a little sister now." And so that's when I'm trying to think of the timeline myself, how that
Well,
happened.
he was 5 years old. They
Yeah.
sent us a picture of him, but said, we don't want to ever see you.
Whenever Heath was 12 years old, this was 1 month after Mac turned his life around. There was a youth rally going on in South Louisiana. That's where he lived. We didn't know exactly where he was, but we knew he lived in South Louisiana. Didn't know his address or anything. But and he was with a good family and all that, but because we had connected that one little time before with just that one little picture. But anyway, so Heath is 12 years old now. Mac just turns his life around. 1 month later, here's this youth rally in South Louisiana. And my sister-in-law, Chris, was part of the chaperones to go to this youth rally. So she gets there, and there's like 1,000 kids. So they didn't have enough rooms, enough homes for people to stay in. So they were having to call other towns close by to house people. So when they got in the car of this real friendly couple
From another town.
from another town, they asked if they had any children. They said, "Yeah, we have a son. His name is Heath." And well, Chris about had a heart attack because, that's my sister-in-law, which she knew at this point, Johnny and Chris, they knew that we had Heath. Nobody else knew, but they knew. That's another story there in itself. But anyway, so when she heard that, she about had a heart attack. So she goes, "Well, when is Heath's birthday?" And she said, "August 17th. 19, and so she's about to have a heart attack thinking, I am fixing to go stay at Heath's house with his parents. So she calls us during the middle of the night, and back then it was from the Arthur's Kitchen Phone Collect
At 2 a.m.
at 2 a.m. And so I answer it, and she goes, "You'll never believe where I'm at right now." And I said, "Where?" And she said, "I'm in Heath's bed." And I just like to fell out. I stood up on the bed, started jumping up and down, screaming. I was so excited. And she goes, "I see his baseball bat in the corner. There's pictures
Pictures.
on the wall, all his baby pictures growing up. He's 12 years old. He said the prayer at the youth rally." And so I woke Mac up. Mac.
No, you woke me up when you started jumping up and down on the bed.
So then when we hung up, we just couldn't even go to sleep. We were praising God. We were like, "Thank God you gave us this gift at a time in our lives when, Max turned his life around, and we've worried, well, all these years, where is he? How is he doing?" And here,
And they never even knew.
and Chris never told them because she was afraid it would scare them and run them off. So they never knew until we met him at 19 years old. And I talked to his mom and told her about that day.
At 19 years old, so we had a waiting time, he decided that he wanted to meet us. So we get another call that we'd always hoped for, that he wants to meet us. And so we say absolutely yes. So we have a time. He's going to come. Actually, he said he wanted to meet his sisters. Didn't care much about meeting us, but his sisters. And we said, well, it's a package deal. If you meet them, you got to meet us too. So the day of the big reunion happens.
Okay, I'll tell this part.
Okay.
Yeah, let me tell this part. So all of a sudden, this big
Lincoln Continental.
Lincoln Continental comes down our driveway, and it's his mother and his dad, his grandmother, and Heath. And he's 19 years old. He comes on his birthday on August 17th. And when he gets out of the car, so it's the first time we've ever seen him. I mean, I'm just like, I feel like I'm floating on air, that my feet aren't even touching the ground when he gets out, because I'm looking at him and he looks like Mac. He walks like Mac. And he just comes straight up to me. And he said, he picked me up, and he told me this later. He goes, I felt like a feather to him because I was just so little and light. And here he was, this big guy. And he said, I'm Heath. And I said, I'm Mary.
He became a great part of our life. His mom and dad became part of our life. They moved up to where we live, started going to church with us. A matter of fact, when his dad passed away, I did the funeral for his adoptive dad.
Wow.
And his mom always loves to come over and cook with us. And so our family, and we were with him last week at my mom's funeral, with him and his kids and his wife. Actually, his wife, we've known longer than we've known him, because she grew up in our church up here. And so, and so it's really amazing the way God just wove all that back together. And
he gave us 3 beautiful grandchildren, Caroline, Gannon, and Anna Kate. And so seeing Gannon as a baby, it was like I got to see Heath as a baby and seeing him growing up. Gannon, all 3 of them have been such a blessing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is simply amazing. And wow, that is such a powerful thing. So I assume that you speak to Heath quite often now?
We were with him this weekend.
So how did Heath become a Christian? How did he, was his adopted parents Christians? And I mean, how did he come to the Lord? Because that's all part of it as well.
He was raised in a Christian home.
Yes,
he had never really turned his life over to Jesus 100% until I baptized him in that pond behind our house.
Wow, that's another God story. He's got to be.
Yeah.
How old was he then? I mean, 19 is whenever
he was about 20 years old then.
And you got to baptize him.
Yeah, he came home one Sunday and he said, "Look, I need to seal the deal on this relationship with Jesus. Would you baptize me?" And
wow.
I said, "You better believe I will."
Wow. So incredible. So incredible. What's that one message that you want to give to the listeners?
Look, I don't know where you're at in your life today, but my life was a total and complete wreck. I couldn't have done anything else to get further away from God or the relationships that I claim to love here on this earth. So I don't know where you're at today, but I would tell you this: don't give up. God's always right on time. And I know this: He's either coming back or He's coming through. He will not leave you hanging. Colossians 1:13 and 14 says, He rescued us from the dominion of darkness. He, being God, rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son He loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of all our sins. Having said that, then Philippians 1:6 says this, that being confident of this, that He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. And then He gives us a completion date when Jesus Christ comes back. So I would say this to anybody out there. First of all, God is standing in the waiting, ready to rescue you. So whatever you've done, whatever you've done, God says, I'm ready, willing, and able to forgive and forget that and see you as perfect.
And what I would like to say is that no matter what has happened in your life, that your story matters. And God loves, He wants everybody to be in heaven with Him. And so, that's what I love about your podcast, that you're letting people tell their stories, because every story needs to be heard, what they've been through the hard times, and then to let God work in their life. Don't give up before the miracle happens. Isaiah 41:10 was the verse that I heard my whole life my mother said. She would say, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand.
Amen.
So God is there for every single person. All we got to do is just reach out to him. He's a gentleman. He's not going to push his way into our life, but he is right there, just waiting on people to come to
Ready
him.
to rescue you.
Yes.